My name is Camille Fowler. My major is psychology. I am taking this class because I am interested in seeing how the different cultures interact, and to kind of learn the similarities and differences. And I just always been interested in anything that has to do with culture, seeing as I do come from a multicultural background. My mother is Italian, and my dad is African American, or, well, technically Jamaican, but black nonetheless. Where did I grow up? I grew up on the east side of Youngstown, and Youngstown is my hometown, of course. I've lived here a majority of my life. I did at some point move to Massachusetts, and I lived there for about 3 years, and I moved back here. What other languages do I speak besides English? I do speak broken Spanish. I don't speak proper Spanish. It's more so street Spanish, very informal. But I do speak it nonetheless. I speak more, I understand it more than I speak it, but I can't speak it. I also know Jamaican Patois, which is not really it is a language, but it's not an official language. It's a mixture of English, African, and Spanish. So that's what I speak outside of standard English. What areas outside of the United States have you visited or lived? I've never lived anywhere outside of the States, but I have been to Jamaica, and I've also visited Canada as well. Describe an intercultural experience you've had that really sticks out in your mind, either positive or negative. Growing up, I had a lot of different experiences being raised by a white mom. I never really, didn't really know there were too many differences. I still seen skin color, but to me, it wasn't a difference because I was raised with both. And I was raised to embrace both. But there was a particular instance where I used to stay summers with my grandmother, and she lived in Barnesville, Ohio, and I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with it. It's a pretty country, small town right outside of Columbus, and there's probably like 5 black people probably in the whole city. I don't know if it's more there now, but when I stayed summers there was like none really ever. There was like the black person. And I remember going to the grocery store with my grandmother, my mom's mother, who is white, short little Italian lady with brown hair and blue eyes. And I remember going to the grocery store with her, and this woman, like this older woman, she had to be maybe, I don't know, 60s, 70s. Anyway, she didn't have no clue who my grandmother was, and she didn't know who I was, but she gave me this disgusted look. And for the longest time, I couldn't figure out what the hell is her problem? Why is she looking at me like that? What did I do? Mind you, this time I'm a kid, so I don't really know. I didn't know that people didn't agree with cultures mixing, because that's all I knew. So, long story short, I happened to overhear her saying some pretty derogatory things to her husband about me. I don't remember them verbatim, and I really don't care to repeat them, but needless to say, they really hurt my feelings, and I cried the whole way home, because I just couldn't understand for the life of me why this woman was being so mean and hateful. And my grandmother sat down and she talked to me about how some people don't really accept blacks and whites mixing together. So, unfortunately it was a negative experience, but it's definitely one that kind of molded me into the person that I am. So Yeah. A ritual that your family practiced as you were growing up. On my father's side, every year on Christmas, before we would open our gifts, we would have to pray over the gifts before we opened them. Like, there was no going around it. There was no shaking the box. You couldn't touch them presents unless you prayed over them first. I never understood why we had I understood it now as an adult, but as a kid, I really didn't care about praying. I know that sounds awful, but I just wanted my presents. But yeah, my grandfather didn't play around with that. And if you touched them presents and you ain't prayed, oh, you was gonna get it. So that was a ritual that we practiced growing up. Tell us something about you that is culturally hidden that we had never guessed in a million years. I don't know. You probably wouldn't believe that my mom is like a 5'1" white lady with blue eyes and brunette hair. That pretty much shocks people. They all either assume that my mother is mixed or Hispanic or a light-skinned black person. Like, people are usually pretty surprised when they see my mom in person. So I guess that's something that's culturally, well, maybe it's not hidden, but to some that don't know me, would make an assumption that my mother looks away, and I can attest that she's the total opposite. So here's my resubmission for my introduction video. If you guys have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them below. And yeah, good luck with the semester.